You've heard of Delta Force. You've heard of SEAL Team 6. You've read the books, watched the films, memorized the legends. But there is a third name on the list at Fort Bragg, a name that does not appear in recruiting brochures, a name the Pentagon, for decades, refused to confirm even existed. They called it the Activity. They called it Orange. They called it Gray Fox, Centra Spike, Torn Victor, Quiet Enable, Cemetery Wind. The names changed every few years for a reason, because the unit was never supposed to be named at all. To understand why this unit had to exist, you have to go back to the night of April 24, 1980, the Iranian desert, a staging point called Desert 1. 8 helicopters, 118 men, and a plan to rescue 53 American hostages from the United States Embassy in Tehran. The mission was called Operation Eagle Claw. It collapsed before it began. A sandstorm, mechanical failure, a helicopter colliding with a C-130 on the ground. 8 Americans dead, the wreckage left behind in the sand, along with classified documents that the Iranians paraded for the world's cameras. President Jimmy Carter went on television and accepted responsibility. But inside the Pentagon, the after-action review delivered a different verdict. The mission had not failed because of weather. It had failed because the United States military had no dedicated, on-the-ground human intelligence inside Iran, no one to confirm the landing zone, no one to verify the hostages were still in the embassy, no one to drive the trucks that were supposed to carry the rescue force into Tehran. The Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, had been gutted in the late 1970s by the Church Committee reforms. Its human networks in hostile countries were thin. In some places, they did not exist at all. Army Chief of Staff General Edward the 100th Meyer looked at the report and reached a conclusion that would change American special operations forever. The military could no longer outsource its own intelligence. It needed its own spies, its own linguists, its own signals interceptors, its own men in civilian clothes on hostile ground. Before the shooters ever arrived, something had to be created. Quietly, permanently, and outside the oversight of almost everyone in Washington. In the summer of 1980, a unit was stood up under the cover name Field Operations Group, the FOG. Its first commander was Colonel Jerry King, a career intelligence officer who had been involved in the planning of a second, never-executed Iran rescue mission, known as Operation Honey Badger. King's mandate was simple and almost impossible. Build a human and signals intelligence capability that could be inserted anywhere in the world in days, ahead of any Delta Force or Special Mission Unit assault. In October of 1980, by directive of General Meyer, the Field Operations Group was formally reorganized into a permanent unit. The official designation, United States Army Intelligence Support Activity, the ISA, the activity. Its existence was buried under a special access program, a classification tier so restrictive that even officers with top-secret clearances could be told nothing about it. The unit's budget was hidden inside other line items. Its personnel files were sanitized. Its members, when asked what they did, were trained to answer with cover stories rehearsed for years. How do you erase a unit from the record? You give it a new code name every 2 years. You change its parent command. You pay it from accounts no congressional staffer has ever heard of. The activity rotated through cover names with deliberate frequency: Centra Spike, Capacity Gear, Torn Victor, Gray Fox. Each new name triggered a fresh compartment, a fresh access list, a fresh denial. Even other Tier 1 units were often kept in the dark about what the activity was doing in their own theater. By early 1981, the ISA was operational. Headquartered, according to journalists Stephen Emerson and Mark Bowden, in nondescript office buildings in Northern Virginia, recruiting quietly from Army Special Forces, military intelligence, and the signals community. Its operators were not weightlifters in beards. They were linguists, cryptologists, case officers in suits, men and women who could rent an apartment in Beirut, drive a taxi in Khartoum, or pose as a businessman in Bogota, and never be remembered by anyone they spoke to. And by the end of that year, they had their first real mission. It would not be in Iran. December 17, 1981, Verona, Italy. 4 members of the Italian Red Brigades, dressed as plumbers, forced their way into the apartment of United States Army Brigadier General James V. Dozier, the senior American officer at NATO's Southern European headquarters. They beat him, chained him, and disappeared him into a safe house in Padua. It was the first kidnapping of an American general by a terrorist organization in modern history. The response was codenamed Operation Winter Harvest. A small ISA signals intelligence team deployed to Italy within days, working alongside Italian counterterrorism police and a handful of Delta Force technicians. They began intercepting communications across northern Italy, narrowing the search to specific neighborhoods, specific buildings, specific apartments. On January 28, 1982, 42 days after the kidnapping, Italian NOS commandos stormed an apartment in Padua and freed Dozier without firing a single shot. The Italians took the credit, publicly and rightly. What was not said for years was who had handed them the address. That was the activity's first confirmed success. It would not be the last. Months later, the unit was airborne over Central America. Operation Queen's Hunter, beginning in 1982, put ISA signals operators in modified Beechcraft aircraft over El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Their target, the radio traffic of leftist guerrilla forces in El Salvador's civil war. The operation continued for years. The intelligence flowed to the Salvadoran military, a military whose record on human rights, by the State Department's own reporting, was catastrophic. The ISA's role in Queen's Hunter has never been formally acknowledged by the Pentagon. The flights happened, the intercepts happened. What was done with the product is a question the United States government has chosen not to answer. Then came Colombia. Through the late 1980s and into the early 1990s, under the cover name Centra Spike, the activity flew small civilian-marked aircraft over Medellin and Bogota, hunting the radio and telephone signals of Pablo Escobar. Journalist Mark Bowden, in his book Killing Pablo, documented their work in unprecedented detail. Centra Spike's direction-finding equipment was reportedly so precise it could locate a phone call to within 200 meters. On December 2, 1993, Colombian National Police killed Escobar on a rooftop in Medellin. The intelligence that led them there came from multiple sources. The activity was one of them. The United States government has never officially confirmed it. And then there was Mogadishu, October 1993. Operation Gothic Serpent, the mission that became Black Hawk Down. ISA operators were on the ground in Somalia, embedded with Task Force Ranger, providing the human and signals intelligence used to locate lieutenants of warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid. 18 Americans died in the streets of Mogadishu that week. The activity's role in the operation has been confirmed in congressional record and in the memoirs of senior special operations commanders. What the activity saw and what it could not prevent has never been spoken of publicly by the operators who were there. After September 11, 2001, the unit, then operating under the name Gray Fox, was among the first American forces inside Afghanistan, weeks ahead of conventional units. They intercepted Taliban and al-Qaeda communications from observation posts at altitudes most soldiers could not reach. They worked alongside Delta Force, the British Special Air Service, and the CIA's Special Activities Division as part of Task Force Sword, later Task Force 11, hunting Osama bin Laden through the caves of Tora Bora. They missed him. They kept hunting for more than a decade. But the story of the activity is not only a story of operations, it is also a story of what happens when a unit is built outside the system that is supposed to control it. In 1983, the Pentagon authorized a covert support cell to provide secure logistics, safe houses, and financial cover for ISA operations. The codename was Yellow Fruit. Within 2 years, Yellow Fruit had collapsed in scandal. As reported by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Los Angeles Times in April of 1987, military investigators discovered that Yellow Fruit operators had set up a numbered Swiss bank account allegedly mishandled hundreds of thousands of dollars in covert funds, and, most damaging of all, had operated effectively beyond the awareness of congressional oversight committees. Several yellow fruit personnel were court-martialed. The unit's commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Dale Duncan, was convicted in 1986 on multiple counts including conspiracy and wrongful appropriation of government funds. In the aftermath, Congress demanded answers. What it found was that the intelligence support activity had been conducting operations on multiple continents that no oversight committee had been briefed on. In 1982, a Pentagon review board, led by retired General Richard Stilwell, recommended tighter controls. In 1989, the commander of the ISA sent a telex formally terminating the unit's name, only for the unit itself to continue operating under a new cover designation. The name changed, the men did not, the mission did not. The unit had been disciplined on paper and preserved in practice. And what of the men themselves? The operators of the activity signed non-disclosure agreements that, by reporting from Sean Naylor and others, extend for life. They are trained to lie about their employment under oath to anyone outside their compartment, including in some cases members of their own families. Some have died on operations whose locations cannot be marked on a public map. Their stars on the wall at Arlington and at CIA headquarters in Langley, when they exist at all, are stars without names. Today the unit still exists. In 2003 it was transferred fully under Joint Special Operations Command, the JSOC. It has reportedly been renamed several times since. Mission Support Activity, and according to multiple defense reporting outlets, the First Capabilities Integration Group, Airborne. Within JSOC, it is most commonly referred to, internally, as Task Force Orange. Its current operational name is not publicly known. Its budget is not publicly itemized. Its personnel count, last estimated by open-source researchers at several hundred operators and support staff, has never been officially confirmed. So consider what we are left with. A unit created in response to a national humiliation. A unit that helped rescue an American general, hunted the most wanted drug lord on earth, walked into Afghanistan ahead of the first conventional soldier. A unit whose scandals were buried, whose names were rotated like burner phones, whose operators are told to deny their own existence and carry that denial to the grave. The question is not whether the activity should exist. Reasonable people in Washington have argued that question for 45 years. The question is this: if a unit can be erased from the record, rebuilt under a new name, and continued in defiance of the oversight Congress was constitutionally required to provide, what else can be done that way? What else has been? How much of the history we are told is the history that was approved for release? This is Phantom Directive. Classified history. Declassified. If you served near these operations, if you knew someone who wore no patch and answered no questions, tell us what you can in the comments. Subscribe because the next file is already open on the desk. And somewhere tonight, in an office building with no sign on the door, a man you will never meet is reading a name you will never hear, on a list that does not exist. The file closes. For now.